Last year, I was invited to write the introduction for a reissue of Colson Whitehead's The Underground Railroad. It is a folio edition that is incredibly beautiful and is full of these, or features these um, stunning illustrations. Um, I mean, it's pretty harrowing as well, which gives you some indication of the content if you're not already familiar with it. Um, so I'm going to read you an excerpt from my introduction. The Underground Railroad is divided into chapters in two ways. Some are named after characters in the novel, others after American states. The states chapters each start with escaped slave notices. I don't think I've ever gotten over the shock of reading these profoundly disturbing documents. Advertisements for runaway women and girls, whose descriptions in many ways match my own. I've read countless notices over the course of years of research, and they never lose their power to chill. They are a stark reminder of the truth. If I had lived 200 years ago, it is likely I would have been the property of a white man or indeed woman. Nothing assists in the creative process of imagining such a fate as when the physical descriptions of these women could quite easily be myself. The South Carolina chapter opens with a notice for a $50 reward for the Negro girl Suki, of rather a light complexion, has high cheekbones, is slender in her person. $25 is offered for the capture of Peggy, the bright mulatto, while the return of a nameless but likely yellow Negro girl will fetch a $30 reward for her captor. The echoes of these notices reverberate through the centuries, reminding us of a system that might no longer be in place, but from which we have inherited the architecture of race, and by extension, racism, as well as the refined and expanded version of predatory, extractive, global capitalism that we remain enmeshed within today. The book takes place mostly throughout the American South. While I was born in Dublin, I spent the first few years of my life in Georgia, in Atlanta. My earliest memories are of the hot sun and red dirt of Georgia. We were there because my father was studying at the HBCU Morehouse. The South got under my skin. But returning home to Ireland, the land of my birth, when I was still a small child, I remember being shocked by the explicit racism that greeted me upon arrival. There exists today a nascent black Irishness that is a discernible entity in a way that was certainly not the case when I was growing up. And for me, desperate to make sense of myself and the racism I was experiencing, I sought answers in books and became an avid reader of Black American history from a young age. Of course, I felt a connection to the South and Atlanta in particular, and the rich Black cultural life I had experienced there. But I also felt a particular kinship born out of the fact that on both sides of my ancestry, Irish and Yoruba, there is albeit constructed, but nonetheless a perceived singularity, whereas Black Americanness was built on plurality, on a type of inherent mixedness, while still Black, of course. Although there were, of course, cultural differences, these were the only other Black people who were Black but Western in the way that I am. who had their origins in West Africa, but were also of European and often specifically of Irish descent too. Don't get me wrong, this is not an easy history. The Irish characters in the Underground Railroad are pretty much unremittingly bad, reflecting the very real dynamics that often characterised relations between Irish and Black Americans during the time period and thereafter. The overseer Connolly is a sadist, enthusiastically engaging in torture. We are informed that in meting out punishment in one instance, Connolly peels the men open the following sunrise. Connolly, like so many of his ilk, is also a rapist who could not countenance his mulatto bastards when their curls glowed his Irish red in the sunlight. From the ghoulish robber, Carpenter, to the treacherous maid, Fiona, the multiple Irish characters' proximity to blackness, both in social positions and in aspects of culture, and in contrast to the upper elite white class, provokes an inherent spite and feverish violence as they leverage brutality against black people as a tool to improve their own standing. There is zero evidence of compassion, recognition, or any sense of solidarity. Histories such as these, combined with my experiences growing up, meant that for a long time I found it virtually impossible to reconcile being both black and Irish. However, through my studies, I came across other histories as well and actively sought out other histories. Instances of solidarity, like the friendship between Northern Irish activists and MP Bernadette Devlin and the Black American political campaigner Angela Davis. Both Bernadette Devlin herself and the Northern Irish civil rights movement were hugely inspired by Black American radical traditions. Devlin famously went on a tour of America to raise funds for political prisoners in Ireland, only to be confronted by the racism of Irish Americans towards black people. In a now famous quote, Devlin stated, "My people, the people who knew about oppression, discrimination, prejudice, poverty, and the frustration and despair that those things produce, were not Irish Americans. They were black, Puerto Rican, Chicano, and those who were supposed to be my people, the Irish Americans, said exactly the same thing about blacks that the loyalists said about us at home. In New York, I was given the key to the city by the mayor, an honour not to be sneezed at. I gave it to the Black Panthers." From the relationship between Catholic emancipator Daniel O'Connell and fated abolitionist Frederick Douglass, to the solidarity between South African anti-apartheid activists and Irish campaigners, and the creative links between the Irish literary revival and the Harlem Renaissance, it is my hope that these moments of support and unity can be highlighted and cultivated while also addressing the realities of Irish racism. Part 2 to follow.